Okay, I am now to the end of my rug. I've got my little end here where I tapered off. So I did sew up to the edge here and down along the edge when I sewed my rope, just to help keep that shut. So now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna sew it all the way up to the edge. When I get up here, I am gonna go about a stitch farther, and then I'm gonna backstitch and do that probably 2 times. So I'll come all the way to the end, backstitch, go forward, and backstitch again. And then I will tie off a little bit back here. So you wanna make sure that you're keeping with the curve, kind of like what we've been doing. Just follow your rug. And again, you wanna keep this spot where it's, you know, the 2 ropes are joined in the center of your foot. You don't need to come over to the side at all. Just keep it where you have been sewing from. And because it is tapered, naturally the stitch will come farther to the outside edge. If you don't want your finger this close onto your machine when you get to that, if you have something small that you could use to kind of hold that in place if you feel like you need to, or you can also pin it. So I'm gonna go we cut the edge, and now we are a stitch farther, so now I'm just gonna backstitch. I'm gonna go forward once more. And again, back. So the first time I go back about 8 stitches, the second time I go back a little bit farther, about 10, and then I am going to stitch in place as well. Which what a stitch in place does is it basically just ties a knot underneath, and I have learned to love the stitch in place. And then I'm going to simply cut it. And there we have our nice finished edge once I cut those seams off. Now I do like to go in and add a Made with Love tag, and so when I add that little Handmade with Love, this is just a folded tag. I think I got it off of Amazon, a whole pack of them. I'm gonna stitch it along that same path, but I am gonna go a little bit further back so I don't just have a ton of back stitching bulk right here, because it does get a little bit thicker when you start to back stitch. So to add my little tag, I just line it up with the seam, and then again back stitch across it about twice. So over, back, over again, so, tie off just like that. So we're gonna add that real quick. I'm gonna trim these. And when I add my tag, I don't want the edge of the tag to be in the middle. I want it to be a little bit farther. I want the bulk of the stitch to go over the tag itself. So I will show you that. I want to start a stitch or 2 off of it. So onto it, following the curve of the rug, trying to stay aligned with those stitches that are already there. And back one more, and stitch in place here, or back stitch to secure it. So you can see here that the bulk of the stitch, the edge is just above the edge of the tag itself. So the bulk of it does go deep kind of down into the tag to really help secure it. And then here's what the other side looks like. So again, it does add a little bit more thickness with the back stitching. If you really want to take the time and match it up with your other zigzag stitch, you absolutely can do that. I'm going to trim that. And then now is the time when I'm gonna look around and see if there are any stitches that I need to restitch or redo. Like I had mentioned before, there was, let's see if I can find it again, an edge that did not catch. Here it is. So here is my edge that did not catch. So what I'm gonna do is I am going to start farther than it, stitch in place, back stitch, stitch over where the stitch should be, And then once I'm past that, again, secure it on the other side. So find where it starts. I'm gonna come all the way back to here. So you can see how now it does kind of, there is a little spot where it's like there's 2 stitches, but at a distance, you really can't tell. I had one more spot over here, which same thing, I kind of, my brain wanders while I sew and, you know, things happen. Which again, give yourself some grace. If you find you really have a lot and you feel like it's more than you can just stitch over, then just rip it out and start again. No hurt, no foul in that. And that just really gives you more sewing practice. If you have to stitch over a spot again, I heard from someone that they said that it's just extra reinforcement, and I love that reminder to myself of this is just extra reinforced spot. Okay, so now that I have all my spots fixed, I am going to show you the final step that I like to do to finish off my rugs. Okay, for the absolute final step that I do for my rugs, first I'm going to trim off all of my threads on both sides. Now, because I add the tag, I do know that this is going to be the bottom. So what I like to do just to extra secure is I take a little bit of fabric fusion and I like to put it over anywhere that I have stopped and started and anywhere that I've backstitched. So here at the end and over this tag, I'm just gonna kind of blobble some on there and then smooth it out. Again, if you've backstitched really well, you don't necessarily need to do this, but I just like the extra security. Better safe than sorry is what I always say. So here's the start of where I fixed that and the other side of it. I don't necessarily need to do the whole length of it. I just want to make sure where I've backstitched. Another thread I need to cut. Start and the stop of it. I just find it gives a little bit better security. And then I'm gonna let that dry and then we're gonna give it a good press.